Michael Granoff, thank you for granting me this interview. Although in COVID times, we are in this virtual connection.
I am sorry not to be able to be with you, Ilva, in person, but I am happy to do it remotely with you from America.
Thank you, Michael. This is the first time, actually, due to coronavirus, that you couldn't be in person in Tirana during the annual board review that the Albanian-American Development Foundation do on a yearly basis. For how long do you believe Albania and Albanians will still need AAEF present in this country?
Well, you know, it's an interesting question, Ilva, because the nature of our foundation is actually to be perpetual. That is, to be in Albania for an unlimited amount of time. And that was how the foundation was designed. And I think that the foundation should be in a position to help Albanians and help Albania develop over the long term without any end sight, just the way that foundations in America work.
And let me ask you, and cut it short to the chase and ask you directly, aren't you growing tired a bit of Albania?
It's an interesting question. No, you know, I think my experience in Albania has been quite an energizing one. It's not often that you get a chance to witness history, to maybe have some positive effect on it. And so I've actually found that my experience, and I think this is true of all of our board members and all of our staff, instead of taking energy from us, I think actually our experience has given us energy, and every step kind of gives us more energy to keep going.
Michael, after more than 25 years, as I said at the beginning of this interview, of commitment in Albania, the foundation has directly invested $109 million, created over 7,000 new jobs, and a contribution of over $2 billion to Albania's GDP. In the third decade of your presence in Albania, are you satisfied with the impact that the work, the engagement of the foundation has had in the development, both in the economic and democratic areas?
Well, Ilva, I'll try to answer your question in two ways. The first is, I have to admit to you that the nature of my own personality is never to be satisfied. And so there's part of me that always sees things that we can do that we haven't done before. And I'm never satisfied with the progress that we've had. But on the other hand, I think that we've been able to demonstrate considerable progress over time. I'm happy about that. I'm grateful for what people have done. I think we've made a difference in Albania, and I feel proud of that contribution.
Michael, you're never satisfied, but you are still an optimistic. So you only have a positive record of what you're doing? Or let me be again more direct. How do you explain the fact that Albania, as a country and as institutions, they still need the foundation help to be able to become sustainable?
So I think one of the things that everyone needs to realize is that development is not a destination, but is actually a journey. And all countries are on that path of development in some way or another. And it's true that the path that Albania has taken to development has been a winding path. And it's not that there haven't been issues or things that have stood in the way or things that have held Albania back. That's true for Albania, and it's true for all countries in this way. And so it is a journey and not a destination. And I don't think that we will ever reach the point where no further development is necessary. And I think you can look at the United States and see the same thing. only forward some period of time.
I agree, Michael. It is a journey, but depends how we are behaving during this journey. Is the fact that the foundation is still very much involved in the country's development a sign of lack of development in terms of capacity building and democratically functioning society?
I think, Ilva, that on the one hand, the activity and existence of the foundation is not an indication of a failure, let's say, on the part of Albania to develop, no more than the presence of the Gates Foundation in the United States would be an indication that the United States somehow wasn't developing. I think that these institutions need to work together. On the other hand, as I mentioned to you, clearly there are things that have held Albania back, are holding Albania back, and it would be much better if Albania could make substantial progress in those areas. And you mentioned them. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion over the last months and years about democracy and judicial reform and all of those things, which are very, very important. And you also mentioned capacity building, and institution building is a very, very important part of development. So I don't want to imply that there aren't problems and there aren't things to be done. There are, but certainly the presence of the foundation and the activity of the foundation, I think, is part of good development over time and not an indication that there's something wrong with development.
Michael, you have been in Albania present in very difficult times and in normal times. These days are not very normal. We are ahead of parliamentary elections, and the political polarization is as high as ever. Do you have a message for the Albanian politicians in both sides, the majority and the opposition, when it comes in terms of letting the country breathe and being able to be attractive to foreign investments, which is apparently not the case, and we are suffering to attract them?
Well, I think that my message would be to the people of Albania that they should exercise their right to vote. They should exercise their right of free speech, and they should communicate with their government representatives in the opposition of what they would like to see. And the role of government and the role of political parties is to represent the people and to create the kind of infrastructure and foundation that fosters good government and good government policies over time. And that's a big responsibility. It's a responsibility that we all have as citizens, and it's a responsibility of all political participants to be representing their constituents and representing the country more broadly.
Michael, in your view, why do you think Albania is having a hard time to attract foreign investors in Albania, in this country?
Well, obviously, Ilva, right now we're dealing with a dramatically changed economic situation where people can't travel, can't move around, and obviously everybody in all countries have become a little bit more insular in that way, and that certainly prevents more foreign direct investment. In order to attract more foreign direct investment, I've often tried to compare countries to companies. I run a company in the United States, and I have competitors. And in order to succeed, I need to perform better than my competitors. And in some ways, the challenge of attracting foreign direct investment is not so different. That is that all countries would like more foreign direct investment, and in effect, they are competing with each other for it. And therefore, the way to be a successful competitor is to look around and see what the best people around you are doing, what works and what doesn't work, and to come up with a strategic plan that you think can do better than what competitors are doing to attract foreign direct investment. And so That's been my advice in general over a long time for the best way to attract foreign direct investment. But the nature of your question is right, is that some of the things that make countries more competitive are in the economic sphere, but some of them are in the sphere of democracy, are in the sphere of good government, are in the sphere of judicial reform. And it's one package. It's hard to take out a single element.
So, better competitive environment will help the climate of investment. How do you evaluate the current cooperation that you have with Albanian authorities?
Well, Ilva, you know, from the very beginning, when I first started to come to Albania, I realized that given Albania's size, our fund and foundation was going to need to interact with government in a way that was probably more extensive than most of the other foundations and enterprise funds that were created across Eastern Europe at the end of communism. I also realized that it was very, very important for us to remain above politics, that in a way we were serving the Albanian people and not anybody who was in power or not in power at a given point in time. And therefore, what we needed to do was cultivate very good relationships with people in government and people who are in the opposition. And that strategy has worked very well over a very long period of time. And in a very hyper-political environment such as Albania, we've never seen the fund or the foundation kind of dragged into the political side of things. And the reason is, I think people understand that what we're doing is in the interest of the country. And in that regard, I think we've had quite good cooperation from all kinds of government entities, from local government, municipal government entities like the city of Tirana, to the national government. And we've tried to form productive partnerships with various ministries dealing with our projects and our interests over time, and try to move them in a positive direction. And I think that's one of the reasons actually we've been so successful over so long. So I'm happy about the partnerships that we've had, and I'm happy with the relationships that we've been able to develop.
And actually, I did see you with the Albanian authorities, the mayor of Tirana, the prime minister, during the TUMO opening in Albania. And actually, I was kind of jealous for my kids. They cannot make it. It's only for 12 to 18 years old. Why did you actually invest on this age group? And what's the main aim that you have about TUMO?
So if you thought about the future of Albania and the future, frankly, of any country, and I asked you to think about a couple of the most important factors, you would probably talk about our children, and you would probably talk about technology. Clearly, our children are our future, not just Albania's future, but the world's future. And clearly, the role of technology is more and more important and more fundamental. And interestingly enough, even in a time of pandemic, technology is something that allows you to go across borders. There are no geographical lines in technology. And so we thought that something that we could really do that would be significant over time would be to help provide digital education to kids in Albania. And so what we did is we try not to reinvent the wheel. And so we looked around the world for the best models of digital education. And interestingly enough, the best model that we found was not in Silicon Valley or somewhere where you'd expect it, but happened to be in Yerevan, Armenia. Mm-hmm. And the people at TUMO had developed really a world-class model for how to deliver digital education that has now been opened in other cities like Paris, like Moscow. So now all over the world. And so we went to Armenia, talked with those people about bringing that model to Albania and adapting it. So that's what we've done.
Yeah. Now that you invested in TUMO, will you still support the Junior Achievement Program in the field of education?
Yeah, these things are not distinct in that way. So one doesn't negate the other. So this is part for us of building a broad portfolio of projects and programs that are going to, in this case, deal with education and deal with Albania's kids. So they build on each other. They don't negate each other in any kind of way. And so my hope is that over time, this entire portfolio that we've created, whether it's junior achievement or whether it's TUMO or whether it's other educational programs, that they form a broad-based set of programs that really can move the needle and help Albania's kids grow up and compete in the world to come.
When will the pyramid be finished, since you are working on it? And what's your feeling and impression when you think that that was a museum of Enver Hoxha legacy?
So a couple of things. First is that we wanted very much to get the TUMO program off the ground quickly. And the reconstruction of the pyramid is going to take a while, obviously. It's an old, neglected building in many ways. And we didn't want the program to be subject to that construction. And one of the things that I'm actually quite proud of is the ability of the foundation to work and develop its programs even in the midst of the pandemic. And I would call that resilience. And I think part of our job in Albania is resilience, is our ability to navigate situations over time and still be able to deliver for the Albanian people. And so I'm quite proud of the ability of the foundation to start TUMO and operate right in the middle of this pandemic. It shows you something about resilience. The pyramid obviously is a highly symbolic building in Albania that stands right in the middle of central Tirana. And so ultimately locating the TUMO program in the pyramid, I think there's a substance to it in terms of digital education, but there's also a symbolic value of addressing the future of Albania's kids in a building that originally looked backward at that time of dictatorship. So I think it'll probably take a year or two to do all of the construction that's necessary. But my hope is that at the end of the day, we will have this program which will give so much to Albania's children, located in this highly, highly symbolic building that will give hope to the people of Albania.
Michael, and a final question about what I'm sure you might have heard in Albania. There was a little bit of controversy regarding the foundation's involvement in the Butrint site. Actually, you are planning to invest $7 million to the project over upcoming 7 years. Why is the foundation interested in investing in Butrint? And if you have heard about the controversy, why there are not Albanian archaeologists involved, how would you respond to such critics?
Well, so first, one of the key areas of activity for the foundation has been cultural heritage from the beginning. And actually, Butrint was one of the first projects that the foundation got involved in, because obviously Butrint is one of the most important cultural heritage sites in the country. And I actually learned about it even before that because of the involvement of Lord Rothschild in creating the Butrint Foundation, probably 25 or even more years ago. And Lord Rothschild and I have been friends for a long time and collaborators for a long time in many, many different areas. And so I learned about Butrint from him, and our activity began quite a long time ago with the installation of electronic ticketing machines to try to provide more transparency there. So Butrint has been an interest of the foundation for quite a long time. And what we tried to do in Butrint is to help the government create what we always do, a world-class management model to make sure that Butrint would be developed in a responsible way and would be open and available not just to the citizens of Albania, but as a channel for tourism for people abroad to come and see this incredible site. Obviously, our involvement is to make sure that that happens in the best possible way. The government of Albania obviously has ownership of the cultural heritage sites, including Butrint, and that continues and will continue forever. And the structure that we've worked with the government on for Butrint is one where this management plan, it can advise the government on how best to manage the project and report back to the government in that kind of way. So there was never any idea of transferring ownership or anything like that.
And when you hear about the critics and the controversy in Tirana from New York, where I believe you are, what do you think?
You know,
aren't you tired and saying, what's the deal with these Albanians? No matter what I do, they still have something to say on this regard.
Well, you know, I think, well, first is everybody has the right to express their views, and I want people to do that. One of the things about having programs like ours over a long time is that we do live in the public policy arena, and we have to expect that there will be people that may be critical of what we do in one way or another. And we have to just make sure that what we're doing is honest, direct, transparent, and works. And I'll just give you one example. When we installed electronic ticketing machines in Butrint, what we found is that the revenues went up by a substantial amount. And it was not because there were more visitors to Butrint. It was that essentially we had ended the corruption where ticket revenues were not going to Butrint. And one of the things we know about corruption is that there's a saying in English that sunlight is the best disinfectant. And one of the things that we try to do in all of the projects we do is to make sure that we're a good example of sunlight. We're a good example of making sure that we address corruption issues. And one of our goals in dealing with Butrint was to make sure that the money that came into Butrint would stay in Butrint, would be used for Butrint. And that was part of the reason why we, working with the government, created the structure that we did to make sure that Butrint would be developed in the responsible way that it deserved.
Michael, since we seem to be still in our troubles here in Albania and ahead of an electoral year, can I ask you if you have already voted or who are you rooting for?
You can ask me if I've already voted, but you can't ask me who I voted for, or at least I can't tell you. So I will tell you that I actually have already voted by mail in New York, and I hope that everyone else in the United States does too. So I hope that people really exercise their right to vote. And I hope that turnout increases substantially. And I think that'll be a good thing for the American election. And you asked me before, I hope the same thing is true for the Albanian elections next year.
Thank you very much, Michael Granoff, and looking forward to meeting you next time in Tirana. And thank you for your interest in Albania and Albanians' development.
Thanks, Ilva. I look forward to seeing you in person soon, I hope.